I've covered some hard achievements already on this channel, but I think Guitar Hero 3 has to take the crown for the most difficult completion of any game so far, and it's going to take some beating if anything in the future is going to be harder. And to give you an idea of just how rare and difficult it is, the website True Achievements, which is obviously a collection of a lot of achievement hunters, has nearly 400,000 users tracked who have played Call of Duty 4, and of those, 61,000 or so have unlocked every achievement. And if you compare that to Guitar Hero 3 with nearly 213,000 tracked players and just 632 having max gamer score, me being one of those of course. It requires an incredible amount of effort and time to get good enough at the game to unlock some of the achievements, and also a bit of luck, but I'll go into more details about that later on. And I've played on and off since the release of Guitar Hero 1, getting my first Guitar Hero 3 achievement back in March 2008, and my last during September 2020. And not that I need another excuse to play through this game, but now it's time to do it all again. There are so many achievements to unlock, I'm just going to cover them as I go and explain how I went about tackling this monster. So first things first, I put together the greatest band on earth and I hopped into the expert career. During this video I'm going to assume a basic knowledge of Guitar Hero at least, but if you've never played it, I honestly can't recommend it enough. It's definitely one of my favourite game series and I think everybody should give it a try at least once. Sadly, it was completely milked to death, but that's a topic for another time. And also there are 70 songs total in the base game, and I think it'd be completely unnecessary to discuss each one, so I'll be skipping over a fair amount just to pick out the highlights. The career set list is broken up into 8 tiers, getting progressively harder and with a few boss battles thrown in. And during the first song, Slow Ride, I got my first and second achievements for 100 and 250 note streaks. Following the next song, Talk Dirty to Me, I unlocked an achievement for getting over 250,000 points in a single song, and there are quite a few score achievements, half of which can only be unlocked solo, and the other half only co-op. Whilst playing through these songs on Expert, I was hoping for some 100% along the way. There's an achievement for hitting all notes in 20 songs on the Expert difficulty, and the more that I could get out of the way now, the less I'd need to come back and do later. Unfortunately, that didn't really work out because I was messing up a lot. I'll blame it on being rusty, or maybe it was nerves from having the camera on me. However, in the second tier of songs, I did get my first for Schools Out, which is one of the later 100% I achieved back in the day, so I found it funny that I managed it on the first playthrough this time around. It has a solo that I always used to miss because I'd overcomplicate it, but not anymore apparently. So the songs to this point generally have had just one part that is likely to trip me up, whether it's a solo or a fill, especially considering it had been a while since I played these, and Sunshine of Your Love solo did exactly that, annoyingly as I was just shy of the 500 note streak achievement. I reached the first boss battle, which was with Tom Morello, and you take it in turns to play sections of the song, and rather than gaining star power, you get random battle powers which make it harder for your opponent to hit notes, and then you win if their rock meter gets too low. And this battle is very easy, and the game's obviously easing you in, and you get the chance to pick up 3 or 4 powers before the computer even gets one, and then you want to use them to disrupt them whenever they have the chance to grab one for themselves, and then just pick good moments from then on to use them. There are only 3 boss battles in the game, but they certainly get harder later on. Tom and I then played a lovely duet of Balls on Parade, and I started the 3rd tier and picked up my second set of gold stars for 100%ing when you were young, and getting the 500 note streak achievement along the way, so it didn't take long to make up for my earlier mess up. And speaking of mess ups, here is the first big choke of the video. So I've never managed to hit every note in Paint It Black before. It's not a song that's particularly difficult at all, just constant strumming, chord and timing changes. So here I am, playing it for the first time in years, and to my surprise have made it to an 800 plus note streak, only to throw it away with 30 seconds of the song remaining. I guess this one will have to wait a little bit longer. But I could see the funny side with 941 of the 942 notes hit, and the one mistake being in the outro of the song. Maybe next time. There's not really much to say about the next couple of tiers of songs. I was in a position where I'd comfortably 5-star everything first try without any danger of not doing so. In fact, there are only 2 songs in the entire career set list that I had concerns about 5-starring, but I had absolutely no hope of 100%ing anything from this point in either. But I still had a lot of fun. This game has a very good selection of songs, and I was working my way through classics by the likes of Pearl Jam and ZZ Top. I quickly reached the second boss battle, Slash. Again, you have the chance to get the first power and can just snowball from there. I said a minute ago that the boss battles get harder, but really it's only the last one that's tricky now that I'm looking back at this and thinking about it. This one does slightly differ from the Tom Morello battle in that you both are playing at the same time at points, so I had to keep an eye on the computer's chart whilst playing my own to pick the best moments to use the power-ups. This was done first time again without any problems. I then ran into my first technical issue, the Xbox freezing, typically just at the end of the song Black Magic Woman, and it happened a few times more after this, until I tried turning it on its side after I realised how incredibly hot it was getting laying flat, and this fixed the issue. But at least that gives me a good excuse to show you the nostalgia-filled Xbox 360 startup screen. A true thing of beauty. Tier 7 was the start of my favourite songs, Before I Forget with its hand-destroying bridge section, and Stricken, which is just really fun to play. As a side note, I have the Stricken high score on a couple of Guitar Hero arcade machines in London, so if anyone fancies dethroning me, then go give it your best shot. And Knights of Sidonia is the first of the two songs I meant when talking about how I had those doubts about 5-starring some on my first attempt. And I remember it causing me a lot of issues when I first played Guitar Hero 3, but all the doubts disappeared very quickly when I managed to hold a streak whilst using star power through one of the first fast strumming parts, and the second half of the song is pretty simple once I had the rhythm somewhat down, and I was glad to get that one out of the way without any trouble. Then an honourable mention to Cult of Personality with its face melting solos that I flailed my way through. And there's actually a miscellaneous achievement for this song, but it's much easier to do on hard, so I'll be coming back to do that a bit later on. The final 4 songs are where the fun that you're having might start turning into stress and pain. The easiest of the 4 is Cliffs of Dover, which is just one big unique sounding solo, filled with hammer-ons and pull-offs. Then Metallica's One is effectively broken up into 3 parts. A nice calm melodic section to start for the first half of the song. A pretty fast chugging riff that is super satisfying to play but also to hear the guitar clicking away, and finally an absolutely ridiculous tapping solo that makes this song one of the hardest to 100% in the entire game. Luckily I'm good at the fast chugging part, so I just save up star power to survive the solo and get the 5-star without any problem. Number of the Beast is 4.5 minutes of non-stop rhythm that will give your strumming arm a good workout, but the amount of notes there are, most of them being chords, means it's an easy song to rack up a big score on if you can get it down. So it was here that I unlocked the achievement for reaching 500,000 points on a single song. And that left me with just one song to complete the expert career. I saved the hardest for last. Raining Blood caused me so many problems when I was first trying to get 5 stars all those years ago, and to be honest, even just passing the song was a struggle thanks to one section in particular. It starts nice and gently, the calm before the storm, and then transitions into a fast galloping riff, and really if you want to be getting 5 stars you need to be hitting all of this, because compared to what comes next, it is a complete walk in the park. The next section is appropriately named The Flood, and this barrage of quad notes has stopped many players from completing expert. I don't really have much else to say about this apart from get practicing, and this won't be the part of the song that makes or breaks the 5-star. The verse, however, will be. Other than the intro to the song, this is the best opportunity to build up score and reach that sweet 227,000 points, the 5-star cutoff. There are 2 star power phrases to pick up, the first during the fast strummed green notes and the second during the slightly less fast strummed chords, and hitting both is key, enabling star power to be activated seconds later when the chords come around again, and really building up score quickly if a combo is held. Honestly, if I wasn't hitting these I would just restart. The rest of the song contains some awkward but not too difficult chord changes, and in the solo that unless you're a Guitar Hero wizard, you should not expect too many points from. And that concludes my rapid fire Raining Blood guide. Sadly this time around I just couldn't quite link it all together. That awkward chord section I mentioned kept tripping me up and I was just losing out on too many points. Actually the very first attempt I did was the best, but I missed a star power phrase in the verse which cost me dearly, and just to add insult to injury, my Xbox overheated and crashed again. It was also really late at this point and I didn't want to annoy any neighbours with how hard I was strumming away, so I called it a night and decided to come back another time. Now it was the start of a new day, but rather than jump straight back into the Raining Blood expert grind, I thought it was a good idea to warm up with some other achievements first. Unfortunately, Guitar Hero 3 doesn't have stackable difficulty achievements, meaning you have to play through the career on each of the 4 difficulties, so I decided to start on easy and work my way up. There are some other achievements that make sense to do alongside the various difficulties, one being for completing a career with lefty flip on. You may have noticed the buttons being reversed on my screen, so that is why. I'm not going to lie to you all, this was beyond boring, especially in the very early tiers where the songs are extra simple. I found it hard to concentrate and genuinely felt myself getting tired and on the verge of drifting off. Because of this, I did actually mess up quite a lot and occasionally worried I'd missed the 5-star cutoff, but luckily that didn't happen. The boss battles actually took longer than they did on Expert, purely because there are so few notes it takes a while for the rock meters to drain. So after 2.5 hours of mind-numbing gameplay, I reached the final tier of songs, and I cannot believe what I'm about to say, but Raining Blood still managed to find a way to ruin my day, even on the easy difficulty. My brain just couldn't compute these alternating notes whilst the buttons were backwards, and watching it back it just looks comically slow, but I literally couldn't do it. And with how little fun I'd had up to this point, my fuse was pretty short already, so after a frustrating few minutes I decided it was time to cheat the system. So I went and grabbed a mirror and placed it so I could see the TV reflection, and suddenly the buttons were no longer reversed. Genius, I know. And for anyone wanting to get this achievement, a handy trick for you. In fact, I'd probably use this for the entire career when I was younger, and no regrets about that. I did, however, put the mirror away after just this song to finish up, and unlike on Expert, the final boss can be faced without having completed all of the other songs, but I wanted to get 5 stars and everything before tackling him, so declined when challenged, unlocking an achievement that I genuinely forgot existed. I finished up with Number of the Beast and unlocked the achievement 5-starring all easy career songs. One other achievement to quickly mention here is there's a miscellaneous one for using the whammy bar on all of the sustain notes during Number of the Beast. Unfortunately, I kept messing up due to lefty flip, so I gave up with it knowing that I could just come back and do it on a different difficulty. Then I defeated Lou without any problems. Luckily one of the power-ups I got increased his difficulty, thus meaning more notes and a faster fail time. So down he went and I finished up the easy career. As a side note about the lefty flip achievement, it's actually for completing a career with both it on and off, and seeing as I haven't actually completed a career without it on yet, it won't pop just yet. Next up, you can probably guess, medium. And yeah, very little to say about this one. After training myself for the last few hours to play with the buttons backwards, I now had to revert back to normal. It was still extremely easy, but a little less soul destroying at least, and even Raining Blood couldn't hurt me this time. I did get quite a few achievements for this playthrough. Firstly, the whammy bar achievement on Number of the Beast. Shamefully, I did have to restart this once or twice though, and then for 5 stars on all medium songs. And finally, I defeated Lou for another 2, completing the medium difficulty and completing both lefty flip and standard careers. Having now played Guitar Hero for around 6 or 7 hours that day, I thought I was probably warmed up enough to go back to Expert and the dreaded Raining Blood. I actually nearly got it first go, but it was a painful 7,000 points short. But only a few attempts later, I had a great start, even picking up the star power phrase at the beginning of the flood, and surely I couldn't mess it up from here. Well, I did my best, because after hitting the verse I completely brain farted, activating star power early for no reason and overriding the extra phrase. In later Guitar Hero games you can actually pick up more star power whilst it's activated, but not this one. Anyway, I had a solid end to the song, flailed my way through the solo, and ended up about 5,000 points above the score required, unlocking an achievement that tormented me for oh so long as a youngster. Now I had to take on Lou, and unsurprisingly, the final boss on the hardest difficulty is actually pretty tricky. It differs in a few ways to the previous battles. Firstly, both you and the computer play at the same time throughout, and also Lou will always get the first power up, which depending what it is, can just absolutely ruin you off the bat because the song is pretty hard itself. And if that causes you to miss the opportunity to grab your first power up, and then it just snowballs into a complete mess really. I found the best strategy was to only use power-ups to stop Lou picking up his to start, and otherwise save them for the break in the song, because after that the pace increases and the powers are more frequent, and you've got a much better chance of defeating him quickly during the later sections. That's probably all much easier said than done though. And I have no shame in admitting it took me quite a few defeats in around 25 minutes before I conquered the expert difficulty and could move on to my next challenge. When tackling the hard difficulty, it made sense to do another achievement alongside it again, this time completing the career on hard or expert using a standard controller instead of a guitar. I'm not sure it's even possible on expert. Well, I'm sure someone has done it, but I have no idea how you'd go about doing fast strumming in songs like Knights of Sidonia unless you had a modded controller. And unfortunately, I knew that I'd be scraping through the songs and therefore have to go back through to get 5 stars with a guitar anyway, meaning I'd basically have to do this entire playthrough twice. Overall, it was relatively easy in the beginning. I wasn't in danger of failing songs for the most part, I just couldn't hold good combos often because my brain would get muddled, and I did just manage to get a couple of 5 stars, so that's better than nothing. And the Tom Morello boss battle wasn't too bad. I just restarted until I won early because I knew that once the computer started getting power ups, I'd be absolutely doomed. But luckily you get the first one, so once I hit that and timed it well, it was job done. I did one more tier, then decided that I wanted to have a break and play around with the guitar on expert. And then this happened. So it turns out the achievement is bugged, and if you load up a completed hard or expert career with a controller plugged in, then the achievement will just pop. Even though the career was completed using a guitar, so yeah, that happened. I wasn't even recording at the time, and I just selected my expert career and then was going to swap the controller over to the guitar, and then I heard the achievement pop and tried as quick as I could to get the recording going so I could capture it. Now at this point, you can see me thinking really hard because 90% of me wanted to just sack the controller achievement off, but I felt like that would be cheating and not in the spirit of achievement hunting. So I continued, finishing the next 2 tiers and then getting up to Slash Battle. This was hard in the first one obviously and took quite a few restarts. Basically I just needed to hit all 3 of the first power-ups and time them well to stop the computer getting theirs, and then because once he was into the flow it was just impossible. It wasn't long after that though that the song Cherub Rock broke me. My brain and hands just couldn't compute the 3-note chords and I slowly failed. You were looking at a man who has been defeated. My hands were cramping and hurting from using the controller, and I wondered if I should just give up with this achievement. So I decided a break was needed and swapped to the guitar and started getting 5 stars in the songs that I had done with the controller already. And I was telling myself that I might come back and finish off the remaining songs. Spoilers, I never touched the controller again. So ignore everything I said just now about it not being in the spirit. And hey, it's called Guitar Hero, not Controller Hero. It's not my fault the game randomly decided to give me the achievement anyway. So on the guitar, I blitzed through, crushing those 5 stars no problem. It didn't really get interesting until the last song of Tier 7. I mentioned briefly earlier that Cult of Personality has an achievement, and this requires getting a score of 200,000 without using star power. It's only possible on hard or expert, and you have to hit nearly every note on hard, but it's still a lot easier than doing it on expert. I messed up in the solo, but I still managed to get it, so you have a tiny bit of breathing space. You can also cheat a little because if you activate star power towards the end of the song, if it's still running when the song ends, it won't void the achievement, and I was fine without doing it this way though. During the song 1, I had a miss quite early on, but built up a good streak from that point. I started getting a little bit nervous here because I was missing the final single player note streak achievement, requiring a streak of 1,000, and I knew I'd be cutting it close with the start of the solo, which I would absolutely be losing my streak in. As a side note, how glorious does the guitar sound clacking away? In the end, I did cut it very close like I expected, but I managed to pick up the achievement luckily. Even Raining Blood couldn't slow my progress this time, and I 5-starred the final song of the hard set list before defeating Lou to complete the career, also getting an achievement for finishing all difficulties. And whilst doing the final boss battle, I was wondering to myself, did I really beat him using controller back in the day? Or did I unlock that achievement the same way all those years ago? I definitely remember playing with the controller, but whether I managed the entire career after this, I'm not so sure. Now that I had all career difficulties completed and 5 stars, I could buy everything from the store. Or so I thought. Because after buying all of the guitars and the achievement not popping, I had a look online, and unfortunately there are some bass guitars unlocked by completing the co-op career, so this achievement would have to wait. And speaking of co-op, my plan is to do a second video which will contain all those achievements and anything else that I don't cover in this one. It might take a while because my friends and I don't get too much time to get together and grind, and just as the solo ones, we'll have to go through all of the different difficulties. But if that's something that you guys would be interested in seeing, let me know and I'll get it done as quickly as possible. Next, I bought all of the bonus songs as well as all of the playable characters, picking up those 2 achievements. I tackled a couple of miscellaneous achievements, first completing a song on expert with all sound turned off. Luckily I've played each song enough times in the last week to hear it perfectly in my head anyway. And after that, I completed the tutorial. Better late than never, that one. And now it's time for another extremely difficult achievement. 20 songs gold starred on expert, which is getting 100% on the song. This is the first time that the luck I mentioned comes into the video. There were quite a few song packs released as downloadable content back in the day, making some achievements easier, and this is certainly one of them. The 20 gold stars can be spread across the career set list, the bonus songs and the downloaded songs. Unfortunately, the Guitar Hero Music Store was shut down in April 2014, so additional content can no longer be purchased, but if you did buy and download them, then you can re-download on a new hard drive by looking at your download history, which brings me on to a mini drama that I had. Basically, my 360 is far too loud, which is unsurprising really, considering I've had it since 2007, and the mic was picking it up a lot, so I borrowed a friend's 360 Elite, signed in on my main profile, downloaded all of the old content, hopped onto a new account, and was met with this. The songs weren't there. So I started panicking that my loud Xbox was going to ruin the video because it sounds like an airplane trying to take off. So I did some investigating online, and it turns out I needed to do a license transfer. I didn't even know this was a thing, but I did it, and to my relief it worked. The reason I wanted this now was for the Muse DLC pack, which contains a couple of very easy songs which contribute nicely to the 20 needed. And there are also 2 relatively easy songs unlocked by playing co-op, but I wasn't taking on co-op just yet, as I mentioned, so it made the DLC songs even more valuable. And that bit of setup done, I got to work. I looked up a breakdown of the 70 base game songs, ranking from easiest to hardest, and amusingly, Schools Out is rated 21st because of its quite easily missable solo, yet it was one of only 2 that I got during my first playthrough. First up were a couple of the bonus tracks, Closer and Metal Heavy Lady, with the combined 1,000 notes between both of them and consisting of pretty much nothing but comfortable strumming. These were both knocked out within 10 minutes. I think I did end up having to restart once on both of them, but the odd mistake was expected when I hadn't played either for a decade at least. After that, I actually tried a few different songs before hitting my next 100%, switching between attempts of Generation Rock, Radio Song and Ruby, having some painful chokes and fails before getting the gold stars on Radio Song. And from here, I went a bit rogue from the list. It didn't include all the DLC, but I remembered the Muse track pack, as I previously mentioned, having an incredibly easy song on it, which is Exopolitics, and boy was I right. This is probably the second easiest of them all, and the only reason it doesn't take the crown off of Closer is because of the note count. And with the nice morale boost of an easy 100%, I went back to claim the Ruby Gold Stars. Only after another couple of fails though, of course. And then it was time to visit the main set list for a bit because I clearly hadn't played those songs enough times yet. Mississippi Queen is a pretty simple one. The bit most likely you trip up on is the intro with the trills, and other than that, it's just a nice short song. Similarly, Slow Ride is not going to cause any trouble for anyone with the realistic chance of getting this achievement, and I managed the 2 of them first time. Talk Dirty to me is a pretty fun song to play with a short but tasty solo, and an outro solo that I rather painfully bottled when I was on track for the 100%, but I got there on the next attempt. And then Story of My Life isn't a hard song at all, but at 6 minutes long there's plenty of time to build up some nervous tension. No chokes to be seen here this time. I was nicely warmed up and in the flow at this point, taking down Sunshine of Your Love, Balls on Parade, and Hit Me With Your Best Shot. I actually used the practice feature for the first time on Sunshine of Your Love plus Balls on Parade because both have solos which I messed up first time around, so I thought to myself it would probably make more sense to nail those 2 sections before attempting the full song over and over, and it paid off. And then Hit Me With Your Best Shot doesn't have anything wildly different to the songs before it, and I crossed that one off the list without a problem. Sadly, I hit a bit of a roadblock there, struggling to make it through the laydown solo a few too many times before giving up for now and moving on to Anarchy in the UK, where I had yet another painful miss. Towards the end of the song, I accidentally overstrummed, so I broke my note streak. However, this was fine because I didn't actually miss any notes. The gold stars require all notes to be hit, but a full combo doesn't need to be maintained. And then in the outro of the song, I missed anyway for good measure. But I stayed strong, and 15 minutes later I had the 100% done, although I actually did the same thing again and overstrummed, so to all the purists out there, I apologise for this not being a full combo, but in the name of the achievement, I took it and I moved on. I balanced out my previous fails with a first time 100% of Miss Murder, which I wasn't really expecting. There's enough chord changes and fast-ish strumming sections to expect a restart or 2, thankfully not this time. And talking of previous fails, I went back and I mocked up Generation Rock. At this point I had 17 of the 20 done. The set list was looking pretty wonderful with all that gold, but I was running out of songs that I genuinely believed in myself being able to do. I tried Paint It Black, Lay Down Again, My Name Is Jonas, and Barracuda, but I tripped up during each one. And then I had a genius thought. If Exopolitics was so easy, then maybe another Muse song would be. Genuinely had no memory of ever playing this song, but Supermassive Black Hole was just to pick me up I was after. There's one part with a blue-orange trill that caught me out the first time, but second attempt I made it through and I got it done. And referring back to the list online, Can't Be Saved is another bonus song that's quite low on the difficulty scale, so I gave it a go, and let's just say I was glad that I'd already missed earlier on in the song when this happened. That would have been very upsetting. And on that note, I decided I should probably call it a night. A few days later I returned, rejuvenated, and with only 2 songs left I was so close to having this achievement done. I decided Lay Down could no longer evade me, and after a couple of solo fails I managed to pick up the 100%, As a quick side note, this is another song I have the high score on for a Guitar Hero arcade machine, so if you're ever visiting Soho in London, I challenge you on this one too. The final obstacle was My Name is Jonas. Not a hard song at all, but a bit of a finger twister when not familiar with it. It took me a few tries to even get through the intro without missing, but after that the muscle memory did start to set in pretty quickly. And for anyone unfamiliar with how Guitar Hero works exactly, you don't need to strum the glowing notes, but I did strum somewhat consistently to help keep the rhythm. And once through the solo and the interlude, with my heart rate reaching unhealthy levels, I mean, just look at the concentration faces I'm pulling, all I had left was the outro, but there was no final choke to be had here, and with a big sigh of relief, I hit the final chord and I was done. Yes. Definitely one of the hardest achievements in the game, that one. This achievement has been unlocked by 3.3% of players, but really it should be less. It has a pretty reasonably well-known glitch/bug to get it without any difficulty whatsoever. All in all, the Enlightened Guitarist achievement took me somewhere around just over 3 hours. But if I thought that achievement was a long and painful grind, it managed to get much, much worse. The next achievement I'm going to talk about was, at the release of Guitar Hero 3 at least, the hardest achievement in the game. And to be honest, just one of the hardest achievements in any game, full stop. Unlocked by scoring 750,000 points or over whilst playing solo. The only on discs on this was possible was Through the Fire and Flames, on expert of course, and required somewhere around 94% notes hit at least. That is absolutely outrageous, and you have to be beyond insane a Guitar Hero to pull this off. Don't let the videos you see online of people playing on 200% speed or whatever convince you otherwise. For the average person, getting this score at normal speed is literally never going to happen. Admittedly, I've never put much effort into improving at this song, but having played on and off for 15 years or so, I can't get anywhere close to that. Thankfully, with the release of some more downloadable content, the list of songs this was possible on did grow to a whopping 8 or so, but with most of those still obscenely hard. There was one that stood out amongst the rest, however. All Nightmare Long from the Metallica Death Magnetic album is by far the easiest route to unlocking this achievement. At 8 minutes long and containing over 3,000 notes, there's a lot of opportunity to build up a big score here, but you're going to need to be able to hold some reasonably long note streaks and try optimize the use of star power. I hadn't played it for a while, but I decided on a simple strategy. Just play the song over and over until I get the required score. Truly groundbreaking stuff. The scores at first weren't great, but I was improving with each one at least, from 618,000 on my first attempt to hitting the 700,000 mark on my fifth. They did fluctuate a bit, but they were averaging higher and higher, and slowly I was getting familiar again with each part of the song. I was grinding this out on a Friday night and ended up playing it about 20 times in a row before going to bed, managing 734,000 as my best, which doesn't seem far off at all, because I guess it isn't, but squeezing out the remaining points was a big challenge for me. The following day I had nothing planned, so I mentally prepared myself for some pain. Actually, I physically prepared myself also, because after playing the song once I realised some pretty sore blisters on my thumb and index finger from the fast strumming, and on my little finger from rubbing against the guitar. It was nothing a plaster couldn't fix though. And little did I know quite how many times I'd have to play this song throughout the day. Building on the practice from the previous evening, I was noticeably improving, but I just couldn't link it all together. Maybe I'd hit one section much better than average, but I'd mess up somewhere else. And then repeated that for hours and hours and hours. I actually have about 12 hours of footage recorded from that one day of the same song. As I improved, I stopped playing the entire thing and I'd just restart after the first verse if I hadn't hit a certain score, and I did manage to push my high score up to 746,000 around this point. I also unlocked the Too Many to Count achievement for hitting 250,000 notes total in the career, which was a small bonus at least for having to play the song so many times. Then came some heartbreak. So after the solo and the bridge there is a brief break before the final chorus and the outro. Hitting this entire section results in pretty much exactly 100,000 points, so I knew if I had 650,000 points I'd be on track. Well, this run I had literally a few points under, but with enough star power to make up the difference. But on these vast triplets I choked and I missed again just for good measure. Yep, finishing less than 2,000 points away, and this was about 10 hours into my session, so I was already losing hope. But only 30 minutes later I was in an even better position with 653,000 points going into the final section. I got through the triplet safely and then disaster. I may have finished with less points, but this was actually so much closer and much more painful. I'm not even sure what noise I made there, but that is the face of a broken man. Not angry, not disappointed, just crushed. But I kept going, doing my best to stay strong. And a couple of hours later, the clock was approaching midnight and I was on the verge of giving up, wondering what I was doing with my life, having sat in the same spot for an entire Saturday and achieved basically nothing. I decided to give it one more go. This run started off okay, but nothing special. But finishing up the solo and the bridge, I was over that magical 650,000 mark, but only just. And yes, I was now extremely nervous. Surely I couldn't choke it for a third time. And you'll be pleased to hear, or maybe not if you enjoy my suffering, but I did make it.
Oh, finally.
Totaling up the recordings over the 2 days, I spent about 16 hours playing All Nightmare Long over and over. What a fitting name for the song. But I can quit my moaning now because it was done. And also as a side note, the developers accidentally used the 1 million carp score achievement icon for this one too, so there's some pointless info for you all. Now I just had one thing left to do to finish covering all the hardest solo aspects of the game, and I'm sure you can guess what it is if you're familiar with Guitar Hero 3. Passing the extremely iconic Through the Fire and Flames on Expert. Having not played it for absolutely ages, it took a few attempts to get the intro tapping down. The margin for error here is obviously really small because there's just so many notes you near instantly fail if the combo breaks. In terms of the strategy, it was quite simple really. Once past the intro, there shouldn't really be any danger of failing apart from the solo, so I just saved my star power for there and used it when I absolutely had to. In an ideal world, this is as close to the end of the solo as possible because there's a section of cascading triplets which can just absolutely destroy you. As you can see it do just that to me here. Although I did unlock the achievement for activating star power 3 times during this song on Expert at least. With each attempt I was getting further and further through the solo, but I still wasn't able to hold on for long enough to survive the end. Failing at the same spot again here and getting another achievement, this time for failing a song 10 times. Small wins. The next run however I made it through that section, but unfortunately the second half of this song is basically just one giant solo and I couldn't hold on. But again I was rewarded for another achievement for failing a song past 90% completion. So this part of the song is known in the Guitar Hero community as the Red Snake, and here you can see me failing literally 1 or 2 notes before that orange note of freedom. See, what I was doing was just flailing around too much and pretty much hitting nothing. Had I just focused on the reds and the greens for instance, I would have made it through fine, and that's something important to note if you're trying to pass songs on whatever difficulty. It's much easier to simplify hard sections and just try hit a few buttons rather than all of them. I did put my own advice into practice, but not before failing because I forgot to activate star power. And on the following run I did make it through the solo, and you can see on the Red Snake the rock meter didn't really move too much because I just strummed the red notes ignoring pretty much everything else. And that left me with just the outro to navigate, and despite never having tapped this last section in my life, I decided now this was definitely the best time to try it. The confidence worked out and I unlocked the inhuman achievement. Look at that score though, I don't think I'll be getting 750k on this song anytime soon. And that's the last of the achievements I'll be covering in this video, so stay tuned for carp and let me know if that's something that you want to see, and I'll do my best to get it done as quickly as possible. And then also let me know if you've got any of these achievements yourself, and if you want to see me tackling some other stressful achievements, then check out my Left 4 Dead video. And otherwise, I'll see you in the next one.